Hey, City Transformers. I'm just going to make an adjustment here. Sorry about the moving. Hello and welcome to my show. My name is Jamie Lindsay. I am the founder of Move by Compassion Academy, where I get to help pastors solve the problem of poverty and the effects that it has on their community. So, if you are a pastor and you would like to learn more about how you can transform your city, just go ahead and go to www.movebycompassion.com, and there will be a link there where you can actually schedule a time to meet with me, or you can send me a message. I would love to hear from you. So again, welcome so much. I'm so excited to have you here. My show is just all about things having to do with outreach and being the move of God, being moved by compassion in our communities, and just equipping the church, specifically pastors and church leaders, and how to do that effectively. So if you are new here, please say hi in the comments. I would love to welcome you. I'd love to know where you're tuning in from. Also, I would love to know whoever's watching, all of your thoughts as we go through tonight's teaching. I am really excited about tonight. I am kicking off a series called The Spiritual Battle of Poverty, and we'll get to that in just one second. I want to make sure that I can see everything that I need to see. So I'm just getting everything ready here. Okay, so tonight I'm kicking off this series called The Spiritual Battle of Poverty. I wanted to do this series because, I don't want us to get so focused, because I think this is a pitfall that many of us get into, where when we talk about addressing poverty in our communities, we talk about, things like, physical needs like housing and feeding the poor and helping people get, job training or whatever it is. I mean, a lot of times we don't even get there. We're just talking about giving cash for paying for bills, helping with evictions, feeding people. And so while those things are very real and very necessary, and very important, I also want us, to talk about the spiritual roots of poverty, because we've been handling those physical needs for a really long time. And that's kind of like our go-to, because that's what we know, that's where we feel comfortable. It makes sense because you're meeting a need. But if we're going to solve the issue of poverty in our communities, we need to think differently, because as much good as all of those things have been doing, and how wonderful they are, I think that we can all agree that they're not transforming our communities, right? Because people most of the time continue to be stuck in that cycle of needing that physical need support or practical need support, versus actually experiencing real transformation. And so that's why I wanted to talk about how poverty is really a spiritual battle. And so for a long time, I have taught, and am still teaching people how to solve problems in a really systematic way. We call this scientific problem solving. And one of the concepts that I teach is called a root cause analysis. And this is really the cornerstone of problem solving, because if you want to solve a problem, you want to fix it at its root. And so root cause analysis help us focus first on identifying like what the problem is and identifying that. But then secondly, identifying the root cause of the problem so that we can fix maybe one or two things that address multiple symptoms that we see, versus just continuing to throw resource after problem. But since we didn't address the root, it doesn't really change the problem in a positive way in the future. And so an analogy that we use is we talk about, let's just say you and your friends are standing on the bank of a river, and you keep seeing these people that are falling into the river, and they're drowning. And so you and your friends, you jump in and you save these people from drowning. And that's really awesome that they're not drowning anymore and they're out of the water. But then a few minutes later, more people are in the river and they're drowning, and then you jump in and you save those people, and this begins to go on for the better part of an afternoon. um, and so I think that sometimes the way that we have structured our poverty alleviation efforts um, kind of feel like that. Like these people are drowning, they're in the river, they need help, and we're just fishing them out of the water and fishing them out of the water and fishing them out of the water, but the people keep falling in. And so understanding things at a root cause helps us to go upstream to to figure out why are these people falling into the river in the first place, because let's fix that so that we don't have to keep jumping in the river and continuing to save people. And so that's why I want to talk about the spiritual part of it, because often sorry, I lost my train of thought. So now and usually, I'm sorry, I wanted to make sure I said this because I don't want to oversimplify things. I understand that poverty is complex and there are lots of root causes to poverty, but I want to talk about the spiritual aspect because it doesn't get addressed, especially in the secular world, um, in a way that I think the church, that's really our corner, our what is the word, like our strength that we bring is the spiritual aspect of it. And we'll talk about that more in a minute. But there can be many root causes, but often when I'm teaching this and I'm helping people work through understanding a problem more deeply, we usually find that there are lots and lots of symptoms of the problem, but there are just a couple root causes. And if you fix just those couple things, maybe two or three things, the problems get better. And so that's sort of the premise of today. I want to talk about the root of poverty. And so while like I said, there are many causes and symptoms in poverty. One of the roots that needs to be addressed is that spiritual root. And so before we get into that, I want to share what the word poverty means, because I think it'll help us in framing why poverty is spiritual. And so, of course, we know that poverty means that it's a state of being extremely poor. But the second part of the definition says the state of being inferior in quality or insufficient. And so I think that really is going to be the basis of our discussion tonight about poverty and the spiritual problem, which we'll get into in a minute. So I also just finished a book called Becoming Whole. I posted earlier or later last week about somebody's testimony to what their experience was in participating in that book club. We're going to be doing another book club soon. Still praying with the Lord about what book that will be, but we had quite a few people join us, and it was just a really great experience. Lots of rich dialogue. I know that book really challenged me. It also challenged the people who were on the book or who were also reading the book. So I think that all of us really felt like it was time well spent. But anyways, in this book, they talk about how in order for humans to flourish, this book is called Becoming Whole, Why the Opposite of Poverty is Not the American Dream. So the opposite of poverty is not more money, because we're one of the richest nations, but also one of the unhappiest nations. And so there's definitely this disconnect of belief that more money means less poverty. And so this book really explores all of that. And so they talk about how in order for humans to flourish, and again, poverty doesn't just have to relate to our finances. It can relate to many areas of our life. But what they say, in order for humans to flourish, is to be in relationship with God, themselves, others, and creation. And so each one of these relationships has a spiritual response to it. And this is why you, the church, are the answer to poverty in your communities. So, first, in order for us to be whole and to truly thrive, we have to know God. And so, without knowing God, how will a person know their worth? So remember, poverty is also being inferior, a state of being inferior or thinking you're inferior. And oh my goodness, I'm having such a hard time saying that. Thinking you are inferior in quality or insufficient. But without really knowing God, how will they ever know their worth? That they aren't inferior, that they aren't insufficient. They have to know him. And so they will not know the good news that they are his child, that they have the kingdom of heaven inside of them. They won't know their true identity as an heir, as a child of God. They won't know how to experience him. And really, what we want to do in our poverty alleviation efforts is we don't want them to even rely on us and us telling them what to do and how to get out of their situation. We want to help them experience God so they can know him intimately, so that he can help them develop a strategy for getting out of the situation that they're in. Because he's the great physician. He knows how to diagnose exactly what the problem is and how to help them with that. And so our role in our poverty alleviation efforts is to help them experience God. So that they'll know that they're fully known, that they're fully loved and fully provided for, and that they have a purpose and that God has designed them for that purpose. Anyways, I could go on and on about that, but the source of all the other relationships really starts with that relationship with God. And so next, they need to be in a relationship with themselves. And so that means overcoming shame, overcoming mindsets that are holding them back. These could be narratives about the world, about themselves, about the system, but it most definitely includes poverty mindset, which I know is quite a buzzword in the church world, but it is a real thing. Mindsets are a strong belief about anything. And so if you have a mindset that the world is conspiring against you or that you're a victim, then you'll always be a victim and you'll always be in a situation where you are disempowered and have no control over your life. Because by believing that so strongly, you're actually releasing that power and that control over your life into the hands of others. And so we want to help people who are living in poverty overcome those mindsets. And poverty is poverty mindset specifically is a strong belief that they'll never have enough money. It is driven by a fear of not having enough, of having scarcity. So it goes back to knowing God, right? If we really know God, we really know our Father, then we know that he loves us and that he provides for us. Poverty mindset can also cause a person to think small. So for example, if a person believes that $20 an hour is more money than they could ever make, it's likely that they won't entertain the idea that they will make that much or that they will be able to get a job that makes more than that one day, because they've sort of set a limit for themselves of this is how much is acceptable or that I think that I'm worthy of making. And so we need to help them realize that that's not the truth. This is the spirit of poverty. And when they agree with this spirit, when we agree with this spirit, it can literally cause us to not believe or hope for a better future because we just accept what's in front of us. Instead, they could also get in a cycle of working and working and working without really moving ahead financially or rotating between jobs because they believe it's hopeless to ever have a different life than the one that they have. And so again, it's about limiting yourself about what is possible, how much money you can make, how much money that you'll ever have. And that's all framed around our beliefs and our thoughts. And so what's worse is that actually we sometimes as churches operate under the spirit of poverty. Um, and so churches that struggle with the spirit of poverty may find it difficult to invest in programs that alleviate poverty because they believe that all they have is what's in front of them. They know how much tithing is coming in, they know how much their budget is, they know how much their building costs are, they know how much their salary overhead is going to be, and so it will give them a very limited view of what is possible because based on all they have to pay spend money on, they're going to make decisions about what their church is capable of. I don't know why I'm having such a hard time talking today, so I apologize. um, they will put limits on themselves and what they're able to do based on the numbers that are on their balance sheets, which to the world makes sense, right? But we are not of the world. We are of the kingdom. And so, going back again to, I've shared before about how we really need to ask God, what is it He's asking us to do? And then stand in faith that He is going to provide it. Not say, well, God, I have this much and I want to do this, so I'm just going to do this. Because we don't want to put limits on God, and we don't want to put limits on what He wants to do through our churches. And so uh, remember that city transformation starts with individual transformation. So if we're going to break the spirit of poverty in our communities, then we also need to break the spirit of poverty in our churches and in ourselves as well. And it seems so silly that as believers, and I say silly, and again, like all of this that I'm saying to myself because I have my own struggles. I feel like all of us have a little bit of this poverty mentality, and we're always working to try to overcome it. But it does seem silly that as believers, we have this amazing, generous, good God, but we're constantly doubting His ability to provide for us financially. Um, and like I said, I'm working this out within myself, so I'm preaching it to myself too. But I really want to challenge you. How often do you look at your church budget or your nonprofit budget and think small? We look at what is in front of us in our bank accounts. We look at our trends in giving, and then we make decisions based on those limited numbers instead of being led by faith and trusting our trustworthy God to provide. And so we box God in what He wants to do in us and through us. And so, the hard truth is that doing that and running our churches that way is really rooted in either not listening and taking time to listen to the Lord, believing a lie about, ourselves, our church, or God, or plain old disobedience. And I will be honest, I have been in a season of all three of those things, including disobedience. God asked me to set aside a stream of revenue, and I was scared. I was scared because He wanted me to shift my focus into something else that needed my attention so that I could do that with excellence. And for a year, I tried to figure it out. I tried to come up with my own plan. I was going to save this. I was going to change this around and, kind of play Tetris with my time and all of this different stuff. But that just caused me a lot of strife, a lot of struggle, a lot of travailing, a lot of suffering that I didn't need to go through. And then once I decided, okay, God, I am going to do this, every door that needed to be opened was open. It was just, nothing short than miraculous. It literally, like the moment that I said, okay, God, I'm going to do this, things started happening and moving quickly. And so I was listening to, I can't remember exactly what he said, but it was something like, our disobedience delays God's plans. It slows things down. So the more comfortable that we get with risk, the more comfortable we get with trusting God, even if we can't see how the money is going to come in, um, the easier and faster things are going to work out for us and for the things that we're putting together. And the timing will always be perfect. Um, so again, just as the church, we need to break free from the poverty spirit so that we can help those in the community to do the same. And instead of a poverty mindset, the church, Big C Church, and those in the community, we need to help them to have an abundance mindset, one that believes that there is plenty of everything for everyone and lots of time to get it. I read that definition this week on a business blog, and I loved it because that's really what it is. We're always worried about not having enough time, not having enough to meet our needs. If somebody else gets something, will it be less for me? All of those things, all of those mindsets are rooted in poverty mindset. And so that also means that we don't have to compete with other churches and other ministries and other nonprofits, because resources for them doesn't mean less for you. God's kingdom is limitless, right? So again, it goes back to identity and relationship with God, even with us. When we have, this complete, and I know we're all going through like our journey towards completeness and wholeness, but we are kings. We are priests. We are king priests. Okay? And not only are we king priests, but we are heirs to a limitless kingdom. And so God will provide for us everything that we need to do to carry out the things that He's asking us to do and more. And so back to those living in the community, as the church, we need to help. We need to help them see that too. We need to help them break off that poverty mindset to really understand that not only will God provide for them, but they are worthy and valuable and special to Him. So as the church, we also need to help them heal from their lifetime of lack and really just allow God to reveal Himself to them as the generous Father who's capable of taking care of their every need, either through miraculous ways or through strategies that He gives them, through spending time with Him. Or it could also be, getting them that job or whatever it is. God is capable of meeting their need in a way that is best for them to grow and develop in their relationship with Him. And so but we can also help with that through discipleship. So if our programs don't have a pathway for discipleship, that should be a concern. And I don't mean that has to be, I guess like what I hear churches say a lot is like, well, they know we're a church and we know that we love them and we're just being Jesus to them. And that is great. That is great. But what if we were more intentional about setting the expectation about transformation, with our ministries, and just being more intentional about enrolling people, not maybe in a mandatory course, but maybe just making this available to them. But a formal program that's focused on discipleship, inner healing, kingdom finance principles, all of those things. What if we could also do that? Or what if you were really great, your church was really great at the, practical needs, and another church was really good at inner healing, and another church had a really strong discipleship program. What if you worked together and developed this pathway for people to experience this and have transformation? And so also, inner healing is so important for the third relationship that I talked about. So in order for us to flourish, we need to have a relationship with God, a relationship with ourselves, and third, the relationship with others. And so inner healing is really important for that relationship. It's important for our relationship with ourselves, but it's also important for our relationships with other people. because it addresses the points of shame. It addresses the lies that a person might believe about themselves and about others. And it's also, like I said, helpful for building healthy relationships with other people. And so some churches, like I said, they may have one or two of these things, but this could be an opportunity for you to collaborate with other churches. Because why continue to reinvent the wheel if another church is doing this really well? Let's be the body and work together so that we can cover our cities with the things that it needs to flourish. And so the spirit of poverty can also impact relationships because it can, cause some, sort of envy and being envy of people who maybe don't live in poverty. Maybe it makes them distrust the people who want to help because maybe they don't perceive them as being the same as them, or maybe they don't understand. I get that a lot. Sometimes I have to work really hard at building trust with people because people see how I live now, but they don't understand that I grew up in a poverty situation, and I do understand. And so that all happens through relationship, but also helping them heal as well. Um, the other spiritual thing that happens is division and the breakdown of the family unit. And that's another thing that we can impact that is spiritual, but we can be intentional about in the way we design our ministries and programs. Because, and again, like it goes back to, if you are seeing a breakdown of the family unit, there's probably a breakdown in their relationship with God, their relationship with themselves, and obviously the relationship with that person. And so, we just always need to be like thinking about these things because they're interrelated, and they're connected. And, especially when we improve one area, it will overflow to the other areas and relationships. And so, lastly, humans need to have a relationship with creation. And so, for the purposes of our conversation, that means that people know what their purpose is. They understand their innate abilities and their spiritual gifts, their strengths, their skills. And they also need to know how special they are and that God created them for a specific reason. And, we could provide job training and resume and interview prep and all of those practical things, which are good. But again, if a person doesn't believe in themselves, if they don't believe that they can do those things, no matter how much you prep someone for an interview, it's not going to work because they already have believed and resolved in themselves that they don't deserve it or they're not capable of getting it. And so these are just a few examples, and we're going to continue to talk about this through this month. But this is why poverty at its core is a spiritual problem. Meeting practical needs and being generous is very necessary, right? Because you can't help a person with inner healing if they're hungry and they're worried about where they're going to sleep. It's just not going to work, and they probably won't take you seriously anyway. But it's not an either or situation. It's not practical or spiritual. It's a both and. We need practical help for people, but we need to start integrating our ministries rather than running them in silos. So, for example, let's say you have a men's and women's Bible study, and you also want to have a food ministry. Why not have something that, like a food co-op, that the people can run? It empowers them to have control over their own situation. It will probably teach them some skills that they need around being organized and, give them some relationships with other people, a support system. But also you could say, okay, well, we're going to run our men's and women's Bible study directly after we pass out the food to people. And so you're integrating those things and you're making it easy for people to participate in that. And everybody might not participate, but at least it's an attempt to start integrating those things so that they're not all these separate different things, but that they're cohesive and there's some synergy between them. Or maybe as part of doing this food co-op, if they're a member of the co-op, maybe they have a mentor and they are required to meet with that mentor once a month, or something like that, to check in with them, to do discipleship. So there's lots of different options that you can do. The point is that we have to be intentional about building personal connection with the people that we're helping, but also setting some clear expectations that you want to help them with their right now, here and now need, but you also want to see them flourish and thrive. And asking them, how can I help you get there, so that you don't have to continue to ask for this help. Even if we're glad to do it, the goal is not to get them dependent on us. So, I'm going to stop there. So that's many reasons why poverty is a spiritual problem. But I also want to encourage you that as the church, as pastors and church leaders, you are uniquely positioned to be able to address these issues in a way that is going to be way more effective than anything that we've ever seen before. This is how city transformation happens. Okay, so I am going to pray for all of you, but stay tuned because I want to tell you about what's happening the rest of the month. So, Lord, God, I thank you so much for all the people that are watching, Lord, and those that are going to listen later, Father. I pray, Lord, that you would just continue to open our eyes to see how poverty is a spiritual problem, Lord. And I pray that you would bless them with just ideas and innovative ways and creative ways, Lord, that they can begin to integrate all of these things, Lord, that we can be developing these programs, God, that just aren't meeting a need, Lord, even though that's a very good thing to do, God. But the God thing to do is to transform people. And so, Lord, I pray that you would just help them to do that, Lord. I thank you for the way that you're just inspiring them now, Lord. Even as I'm praying, God, I can see all these different ideas coming to people's minds, Lord. I just release that, Lord. I also want to just impart on people an extra measure of faith, that as they step out, as they begin walking in step with you for what you want for their cities, God, that they can trust you, Lord. They can trust you to provide everything that they need, even if it feels like they're taking a risk. And so, God, I just thank you for that. I pray that you would bless every person on this call in Jesus' name, or on this video in Jesus' name. Amen. And so next week, I'm really excited. I'm hopefully going to have an interview lined up, but we're going to be talking about how to prepare ourselves for the spiritual battle of poverty, because transformation starts with us. So I want to talk about that. We're going to talk about the following week, creative dominion. I'm interviewing Shalish Jimenez. She is a friend and mentor, author of The Path. She also has a school called Rethink University, an Emerge School for Transformation. So I'm really excited about all the wealth of knowledge that she's going to share with us. And then at the end of March, I'm going to have Kim Combs join me. She is just an amazing spiritual, prayer warrior. She has a couple different Facebook groups. Prayer Warriors is the name for the one for pastors. And she's going to talk to us about how to develop a prayer strategy for fighting the spiritual battle of poverty in our communities. And so I am just really excited for all the things that are coming up this month. I would love to hear from you. What are some topics that you would like to learn more about? Or maybe what has resonated with you in the video today, or things that you're wondering about related to the spiritual battle of poverty. I would love to hear from you. So comment below. Please like and share this video so that others can learn how we can approach alleviating poverty in a different way and really get at addressing the way that it's impacting our communities. So I look forward to seeing you all next week, and I hope you have an amazing, blessed week, just full of abundance. So I will